So, Genshin Impact version 5.6 is looking surprisingly packed. And in this video, I want to talk about everything we do know, like the confirmed new characters, the new story content in Mondstadt, and some potential reruns we can expect based on patterns and info we've gotten so far. I'll also throw in a few personal takes and speculations. If you want to save up to 23% on the Veresa and Xianyun banners, check out lootbar.gg. Here, I'm buying the 6,480 Genesis Crystals pack for $79, while it costs $100 in-game, saving me $21 instantly. The top-up process is super simple. I just entered my UID and selected my server. In less than 5 minutes, the gems appeared in my account. As you can see, I received double the amount for my first purchase, just like with in-game top-ups. Beyond Genshin, you can also top up in Honkai Star Rail, and Lootbar has over 50,000 satisfied users. I regularly use Lootbar for my giveaways, so I can personally recommend it. New users can get an extra 8% discount from the link in the description. Alright, first up, Escoffier. Yes, you might have seen the name Akefi floating around before, but that turned out to be wrong. It's Escoffier, and she's the new 5-star cryo character debuting in version 5.6. She uses a pole arm, and visually she really stands out. Blonde hair, high-thigh outfit, white chef-style clothing, and a proper chef's hat. You might have caught her in the recent Veresa trailer. What's really intriguing is that while she's shown in the context of Natlan, it's been mentioned that she's actually not from Natlan. Some think she might be from Fontaine, but possibly working in Natlan as a top-tier chef. It definitely adds a layer of mystery to her origin. Now here's something interesting. While we don't have her full kit yet, there are already some breadcrumbs from early info that give us a sense of how she works. Apparently, Escoffier's Elemental Skill and Elemental Burst both apply a cryo and hydro resistance debuff to enemies when they hit, and this debuff actually scales based on how many cryo or hydro characters are in your party. So if you're running 1, 2, 3, or even 4 hydro or cryo teammates, you get -5%, -10%, -15%, and up to -55% cryo and hydro resistance on enemies for 12 seconds. That's a massive debuff, but it only works if you build your team around those two elements. So yeah, it definitely looks like she's limited to cryo and hydro comps, but in return, she brings some serious resistance shred support, especially for those two elements. That already puts her in a really solid spot as a dedicated enabler for someone like Skirk, and maybe even for future cryo or hydro characters down the line. And based on what we've seen so far, it also seems like Skirk herself might end up being limited to hydro and cryo teams too. But that part's not fully confirmed yet, so definitely take it with a grain of salt for now. Now, when it comes to the rest of Escoffier's kit, it's probably best to wait just a little bit. We're getting the full reveal tomorrow. So while this already gives us a solid idea of her role and where she might fit, I'd hold off on any final judgments until we can see how her numbers scale and what kind of utility she brings outside of those debuffs. Now for Ifa. Unfortunately, it looks like he's still confirmed as a 4-star Anemo character using a catalyst. But here's the fun twist. His in-game weapon might be a catalyst, but the actual model looks like a gun. A literal gun, which honestly is becoming more normal for Genshin. As of now, though, we don't have any solid info on his kit, so that's something to keep an eye out for in the upcoming beta or drip info. By the way, we're expecting to see the official drip marketing for both Escoffier and Ifa in about a week. But if you're like me and can't wait, the unofficial reveals will already start showing up tomorrow. So yeah, we're about to get a much clearer picture of what they can do. It's always fun seeing the early kit breakdowns before the official posts even drop. Speaking of reruns, there are a couple of characters that make a lot of sense for 5.6, based on the pattern we've seen during the Natlan arc. Each patch so far has included at least one rerun of a Fontaine character, and at this point only Emily hasn't gotten hers, so it's very likely she'll show up this time. If you skipped her during her original banner, this might be your second chance. On top of that, Natlan reruns have already started, with Shalonen getting hers in the first half of 5.5. That opens the door for either Mualani or Kinich to show up next. Both of them are still pretty fresh in people's minds, but here's the thing. Hoyoverse has a clear pattern when it comes to reruns. If a character was released in the first half of a region, meaning from X.0 to X.4, they almost always get a rerun in the second half of that region, from X.5 to X.8. So characters like Mualani, who came out earlier in Natlan's timeline, are basically guaranteed to get a rerun sometime soon, unless your name is Riothisli for some reason. So if this pattern holds, and it usually does, Mualani showing up in 5.6's second phase would make a lot of sense. Kinich could happen too, but Mualani is the safer bet. Still, no official confirmations yet, so keep an eye out. Now, this next part is where things start to get really interesting. You might have heard that version 5.6 will include new story content in Mondstadt, and even a new weekly boss tied to that update. The new Mondstadt Story is huge because it's the first major return to Mondstadt's lore in a long while. But just a few hours ago, something even more intriguing came out. Duran might become a playable character in the future. The leak mentions that he will have a medium-sized male model, kind of like Venti. And suddenly, things start clicking together. If we're going back to Mondstadt for story content in 5.6, and Duran is potentially getting more focus soon, then rerun-wise, I have a theory. Remember back in 5.2, Leakerfowl said there would be a Dragon Spine event with possible Wanderer rerun? That event never happened, but what if it was just delayed until 5.6 to match this Mondstadt story? It's purely speculation at this point, but it actually lines up well. And Wanderer hasn't had a rerun in quite a while, so it's about time. Now, I do want to clarify, this is not confirmed. I'm not saying Wanderer is for sure showing up in 5.6, but if you're someone who likes to plan your Primogems ahead, take this banner's lineup as a reference. It might be worth keeping a close eye on how this plays out. So to sum it all up, version 5.6 brings us Escoffier, a cryo-polearm user who seems tied to Fontaine but working in Natlan, and is rumored to be a support unit for Skirk. We're also getting Ifa, a 4-star Anemo Catalyst user with a literal gun, which is just cool in itself. Based on past patch patterns, we're likely to see reruns for Emily and either Mualani or Kinich, continuing the trend of rerunning Fontaine and Natlan characters during this arc. And for 5.6, with Mondstadt story content and a new weekly boss, there's growing speculation that Wanderer might finally get that rerun people have been waiting for. What do you think? Are you excited about Escoffier and Aoife? Or are you saving up for someone else? Do you think the Wanderer rerun theory holds water? Or is it just another delay like we've seen before? I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. Save up to 23% on the current banners at lootbar.gg. All you need is your UID and server. The link is in the description.